We have made it to the final award of the night, the Doug Gardner Award. This one, decided by the officers of the SJA, it's regarded as the highest honour for the person who's made a lasting contribution to sports journalism. David.
At this point, may I invite on stage to help me make this presentation four of the giants of journalism over the last 25, 30 years: Patrick Collins, James Lawton, Hugh McIlvanney, and Jeff Powell. You want to come up, James? And... There you go. Hugh, how are you? Thank you. We've got one, miss. Pat, where are you? You're here. Good. President, thank you. We have multi-award winners here and two previous recipients of this Doug Gardner trophy. The Doug Gardner Award salutes a lifetime achievement by an SJA member. As you've seen tonight, the SJA is a broad church, but we've never before presented the Doug Gardner Award to a broadcaster. This year's winner is acknowledged as one of the outstanding talents of his profession, a man whose success and reputation have never affected his fundamental openness and modesty. He had a long career. Just part of his remit was to cover the England football team, and he had to work with 11 different managers. Those of us who worked with him or travelled the world in his company felt privileged to have him as a colleague and as a friend. In terms of radio broadcasting, I'd suggest our recipient tonight should be rated right up there with his illustrious predecessors, Brian Butler and Peter Jones. Football managers who worked with this journalist all respected his professionalism, the way he went to see them before the game to gauge their ideas and their tactics, and they also respected the way he could constructively criticise them and their teams when performances weren't good. Now, before we create a new saint here, and I'm sure you know our winner is Mike Ingham, I must share with you an insight supplied by that bon vivant and former England skipper Terry Butcher, who sends his apologies for not being here tonight because he's out of the country. Now, Terry worked as a BBC pundit and worked alongside Mike Ingham, and recalled Mike's love of a glass of fine wine, usually a full-bodied French red. And it was during England's stay at Baden-Baden during the 2006 World Cup finals that the BBC minibus returning from a press conference was commandeered by Messrs. Butcher and Ingham and directed to a local restaurant. Mike cast his eye down the wine list before asking the maitresse d' for a couple of bottles of fine French wine. The imposing German lady was not impressed. In fact, she was downright put out. And she demanded to know from Mike why it was he was so prejudiced against Germans and German wine, and insisted on staging an impromptu wine tasting. She brought out 3 bottles of her finest German wine, which even Mike was forced to admit were better than his selection. As Terry Butcher explained, the key thing was Mike ate humble pie in such a gracious way. In fact, the wine was so good that the boys wrote down the details of the vineyard and were ordering it wherever they went across Germany. Our winner didn't deal in hype. He spoke with authority. He commanded respect from his colleagues and expert summarisers who loved working with him. He didn't scream and force his opinions on others. He offered controlled, wise counsel, and most of all, he eloquently and accurately described sporting events to his millions of listeners. The winner of the Doug Gardner Lifetime Achievement Award is Mike Ingham. Now, come on. You didn't know that was coming, did you? There you go, you have that.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, let's have a little word from Mike Ingham, shall we? Mike, I know you're not used to microphones, but there is one over there. Perhaps you could just give us a couple of moments. Late on cue, as always. There we are.
That's what they tell us, I think.
Ooh, what, I mean, just look at these four guys. Can you please again applaud for these four inspirational characters here? Thank you. Honestly, didn't know anything about this, so bear with me. It's great to be amongst so many friends this evening. I'm conscious of the fact that one or two of you might be seeing me in the flesh for the first time. So you now know why I had a career in radio and not television. And I'd like to thank the BBC for that career. And in particular, the man who appointed me as correspondent for the BBC, Mike Lewis, is here this evening, so thank you, Mike. Actually, it wasn't a career. It really wasn't a career. Des Lynam, when he wrote his autobiography, said, I think his autobiography was entitled, I Should Have Been at Work. It was a hobby. I mean, how on earth to be paid to go and watch the best football in the world and to sit next to Dennis Law, Jimmy Armfield, Trevor Brooking, Terry Butcher? How can that be and it's only really, I guess, since I retired that I've become even more aware of that. Sometimes you're not. You're in a bit of a bubble and you don't realize how fortunate you are. I've never been given an award before. The last time I was supposed to have an award was about 46 years ago when the headmaster at school refused to give it to me on the grounds that I was a bad influence. I was at the time impersonating Jimi Hendrix, and he just wouldn't approve of me in public. But what is the most fantastic thing about this is the fact that it's given by the Sports Journalists Association. I always wanted to be a journalist, really, but I was to writing really what Monty Python's Flying Circus were to flower arranging. And I suppose to become a broadcaster was the next best thing. But the thing I've missed most of all now, and what I'm forever grateful for, is the camaraderie of all of the guys, all the journalists. I'd like to thank Jeff, in particular, and Steve Curry for taking me under their wing on my first overseas trip over 30 years ago. I was just about sobered up from that. So thank you for that, Jeff. And I think what I'd like to do is dedicate this to the memory of two people who certainly these four guys, and Jim will remember, and David. Two people who were the biggest inspiration for me, biggest influence. They were my mentors. I think about them every day, Peter Jones and Brian Butler. There isn't a day that goes by that I don't think of them. And as I look up to heaven, I'm thinking about you even more, chaps. Thank you very much for your inspiration. This is for you as well. Thank you.
Brilliant stuff, Mike. Thank you, guys.